This morning in the heart of New York City, a single ounce of silver changed hands for $80. It was a transaction marked by tension, a quiet desperation in the eyes of the buyer who knew something the rest of the world is only starting to glimpse. At that exact same moment, halfway across the globe in the bustling financial district of Shanghai, my primary contact made a purchase of the very same metal, but he did not pay $80. He paid $90 for 1 ounce. Think about that for a moment. We are talking about the same chemical element, the same purity, and the same global market day. Yet, there exists a $10 gap between the West and the East. In the world of high finance, this is not just a simple premium. It is not a standard market spread that traders can easily explain away. This $10 difference is a funeral. It is the sound of a system that is finally broken under the weight of its own lies. We are currently standing in a 48-hour window of absolute historical significance. On January 1st, this $10 gap will not close. It will become a canyon that swallows the wealth of those who are unprepared. If you are sitting on a pile of paper dollars right now instead of holding physical metal, you are standing on the wrong side of history. The bridge between the paper price and physical reality is collapsing, and the collapse is starting in the East. Let me be very direct with the men listening to this. What I'm about to lay out for you over the next 30 minutes will fundamentally alter your perception of the global financial architecture. For decades, we have been told that prices are set on the big exchanges in New York and London. We have been told that supply and demand are in a delicate balance. But that balance was a facade. China currently controls between 60 and 70% of the world's silver supply. To be clear, I am not talking about what stays in the ground. I am talking about the supply chain, the actual flow of physical metal that moves from the massive refineries to the high-tech factories and eventually into the products we use. And in less than 2 days, the government in Beijing is turning off the tap. This is not a gradual reduction. This is not a minor adjustment of quotas to manage inflation. They are installing a licensing system so restrictive and so centralized that it effectively nationalizes the silver trade. They have set a threshold that requires any exporting company to produce at least 80 metric tons of silver annually just to qualify for a permit. Do you realize how many independent refineries that eliminates with a single stroke of a pen? It eliminates almost all of them. This is the final trap, and the world is about to walk right into it. On October 30th, 2025, the Ministry of Commerce of the People's Republic of China released a document that effectively ended the era of the free silver market. They did not announce it with a grand ceremony. They did not hold a press conference to warn Western investors. They simply published the new regulations for the export of dual-use items. Hidden within the technical jargon was a death warrant for the global silver supply chain. Starting January 1st, 2026, every single ounce of silver leaving Chinese soil requires a government-issued export license. On the surface, this might sound like standard bureaucracy, but the devil is in the specific requirements. To even apply for this license, a refining company must prove an annual production capacity of at least 80 metric tons. To put that into perspective, most medium-sized refineries that provide the bulk of the world's silver flow do not even come close to that number. Furthermore, any company seeking a license must possess a credit line of at least $30 million and be cleared by a state security review. This is not about safety or quality control. This is a chokehold. By setting these barriers so high, Beijing is intentionally crushing the small and medium-sized players. They are funneling the entire silver industry into a handful of massive, state-controlled entities that answer directly to the central government. This means that the silver market is no longer a market. It has become a geopolitical weapon. When the small refiners are gone, the silver that used to move freely across borders based on price discovery will be locked inside China. Those large state firms do not care about the spot price on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. They care about the strategic directives of the Chinese Communist Party. The strategy here is brilliant and cold. China has spent the last decade becoming the world's factory for the Green Revolution. They produce the vast majority of the world's solar panels and electric vehicle batteries. They have realized that while the West talks about a green transition, China owns the materials required to build it. By restricting silver exports, they are ensuring that their own domestic industries have an absolute monopoly on the most conductive element on Earth. They are effectively telling the rest of the world that if you want the technology of the future, you must buy the finished product from China. You will not be allowed to buy the raw silver to build it yourself. This is the definition of a supply-side trap. They allowed the world to become addicted to cheap Chinese silver for years, and now, at the moment of maximum dependency, they are slamming the door shut. The Red Decree is not just a policy change. It is the first shot fired in a new kind of resource war, and the first casualties will be those who believed the supply would last forever. To understand the gravity of our situation, we must move away from emotions and look strictly at the mathematics of the silver market. The numbers do not have an agenda, and right now, they are screaming. Since the year 2021, the global silver market has been running a massive structural deficit. Every single year, the world consumes significantly more silver than it mines and recycles. In the most recent calendar year, total global demand reached 1,240,000,000 ounces. During that same period, total supply from both mining and scrap metal reached only 1,010,000,000 ounces. This leaves a staggering hole of 230 million ounces. This is not a one-time anomaly. This is a persistent, growing gap that has resulted in a cumulative deficit of over 2,500 tons annually. For the past few years, the world has been filling this massive hole by draining the vaults of the major exchanges. We have been living on borrowed metal, and the lender has just called in the loan. If we look at the COMEX registered inventories, the data is haunting. In recent months, we saw massive outflows. Asahi reported a drop of 1,420,000 ounces. JP Morgan saw a reduction of 597,000 ounces in a very short window. Even more alarming is the situation at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. Their silver inventories hit a 10-year low in November of 2025. When the largest consumer and the largest refiner in the world is running out of physical stock, the entire system is on life support. The mainstream media will tell you that the price is $80 because of high interest rates or dollar strength, but they are looking at a digital ghost. The physical reality is that the vaults are becoming empty rooms. Now add the Chinese export ban to this equation. If the world was already struggling with a 2,500-ton deficit while China was exporting freely, what happens when that supply vanishes? Market analysts who are actually paying attention are now projecting that the global deficit will double to 5,000 tons annually starting in 2026. There is no magical source of silver waiting to be discovered. Mexico is the largest producer, but they send the majority of their raw ore to China for refining. Peru and Australia cannot suddenly double their output overnight. It takes a decade to bring a new silver mine from discovery to production. It takes years to build the high-capacity refineries that China is now locking away. We are facing a mathematical certainty of total supply exhaustion. When the industrial giants realize that the math no longer adds up, the price will no longer matter. Only possession will matter. We must address a fundamental misconception. Many people still view silver as nothing more than a secondary precious metal, a cheaper alternative to gold. This thinking is outdated by at least 30 years. In the modern world, silver is a high-tech industrial commodity that is absolutely essential to the survival of the 21st century economy. It is the most conductive element on the periodic table. It is the most reflective. It is the most thermally efficient. You cannot substitute it, and you cannot build a future without it. Let us look at the solar industry, the backbone of the global energy transition. Every single solar panel requires silver paste to conduct electricity from the cells. Currently, the industry consumes about 190 million ounces of silver every year. As the world pushes for carbon neutrality, that number is expected to double. You cannot make a high-efficiency photovoltaic cell without silver. If the price of silver goes to $500, the solar companies will still have to buy it, because without that tiny amount of metal, their multi-billion-dollar factories become useless graveyards of glass and silicon. Then we have the electric vehicle revolution. A standard internal combustion engine car uses about 15 to 28 grams of silver. An electric vehicle, however, uses between 25 and 50 grams. Silver is in the battery management systems, the navigation units, and the charging infrastructure. Every Tesla, every BYD, and every electric truck hitting the road is a mobile silver hoard. With global EV production projected to reach tens of millions of units annually, The automotive sector is effectively cannibalizing the silver market. But the real silent killer of supply is the artificial intelligence explosion. We are currently building massive data centers at a rate never seen in human history. Every AI server, every 5G tower, and every high-speed semiconductor chip relies on silver for its superior conductivity. In the digital age, speed is everything. Silver provides that speed. China understands this perfectly. They are not just the world's largest refiner of silver, they are the world's largest consumer. They have looked at their own internal demand for solar panels, their dominant EV industry, and their growing AI infrastructure. They have done the math and realized they do not have enough silver to share with the rest of the world and still meet their own national goals. By imposing the export ban, Beijing is essentially stockpiling the fundamental building block of future technology. They are choosing their own industrial survival over the global market's needs. We are no longer talking about jewelry or coins sitting in a safe. We are talking about the industrial lifeblood of the planet. When the supply chain for this lifeblood is severed, every tech company in the West will find itself in a state of existential terror. In the world of materials science and advanced engineering, there is a term used to describe a substance that is perfect for a specific task, but impossible to acquire. They call it unobtainium. Silver has officially entered this phase. This is no longer a market where you can simply place an order and expect delivery. This is now a market where the highest bidder often leaves empty-handed. To understand what happens next, we must look at a historical precedent. In the year 2020, a little-known metal called rhodium, which is used in automotive catalytic converters, faced a similar supply shock. Within a few months, the price of rhodium went from $2,000 an ounce to $29,000. That is a 14 times increase. Why did this happen? It happened because the major car manufacturers were in a state of photo. As I mentioned earlier, photo stands for the fear of dying out. It is far more powerful than FOMO, the fear of missing out. When a retail investor experiences FOMO, they might lose a potential profit. But when a multi-billion-dollar corporation like Samsung, Tesla, or LG experiences photo, they are facing the total shutdown of their production lines. If a car company cannot get the 50 grams of silver needed for an electric vehicle, they cannot sell that $50,000 car. At that point, paying $100, $200, or even $500 for an ounce of silver is no longer an expense. It is a bargain. Right now, the industrial procurement managers are in a state of absolute panic. They are seeing the same data you are. They see the empty vaults in London. They see the 60-day waiting periods at the refineries. And they see the January 1st deadline from China. They are not waiting for the price to drop. They are calling every mine and every private vault holder they can find. We are seeing reports of major tech firms approaching mining companies directly to offer front-end financing. They are essentially saying, we will pay for your mining equipment today if you promise to sell every ounce of silver you produce directly to us, bypassing the open market entirely. This is the ultimate sign of a broken system. When the giants bypass the exchanges, the price discovery mechanism is dead. The $80 price you see on your screen today is a ghost. It is a number based on paper contracts and digital promises. The real price of silver is the price at which you can actually take delivery of a physical bar. In Shanghai, that price is already 90. By next week, as the reality of the unobtainium phase sets in, that gap will explode. We are moving toward a world where the quoted price might be 100, but the availability is 0. If this story has a villain, or perhaps a shadow king, it is J.P. Morgan Chase. For more than a decade, this institution has been the largest short seller in the silver market. They were the ones who used the futures market to keep a lid on prices, often accused of suppressing silver to protect the value of the dollar. In the year 2020, they even paid a record $920 million fine to settle charges of precious metals market manipulation. But they did not stop. They simply changed their strategy. Between June and October of 2025, something extraordinary happened. Internal trading data and warehouse reports indicate that J.P. Morgan quietly closed its entire 200 million ounce paper short position. But they did not just move to a neutral stance. They flipped. They went massively long. Credible market analysis now suggests that JP Morgan holds a physical silver hoard of approximately 750 million ounces. To put that number in perspective, that is nearly 10 months of total global silver demand sitting in the vaults of a single bank. It is 40% of all COMEX futures contracts. This is not just a trading position, this is a monopoly. It is a cornering of the market that would make the Hunt brothers of 1980 look like amateurs. JP Morgan has effectively transitioned from being the primary suppressor of silver prices to being the ultimate beneficiary of a price explosion. Why did they flip? Because they saw the same red flags we are discussing. They knew China was preparing to lock down exports. They saw the industrial deficit reaching a breaking point, and most importantly, they saw the regulatory landscape in the West becoming more unpredictable. This explains their next shocking move. In late 2025, reports emerged that JP Morgan relocated its entire precious metals trading desk from New York to Singapore. This was an emergency move, executed during the Thanksgiving holiday, involving more than 50 traders and their families. Why move to Singapore? Because Singapore offers a zero-tariff policy on physical metals and, more importantly, a regulatory environment overseen by the Monetary Authority of Singapore, which is far more flexible than the CFTC in Washington. By moving their operations to the east, JP Morgan is positioning itself outside the direct reach of U.S. congressional subpoenas and the immediate jurisdiction of Western regulators. They are preparing for a world where the physical metal is stored in Asia, and the rules of the game are rewritten. They are not just a bank anymore. They are a global silver sovereign. When the shortage hits its peak in 2026, and companies like Samsung or Tesla are desperate for metal, they will not be calling a mine in Mexico. They will be calling the silver desk in Singapore, and JP Morgan will be the one to name the price. On the night of November 28th, 2025, something happened that should have sent shockwaves through every financial news outlet in the world. But instead, it was met with a deafening silence. During one of the most volatile silver rallies in history, the COMEX exchange experienced a sudden 10-hour trading halt. The official explanation provided to the public was a cooling system failure at their primary data center. A cooling system failure. In the age of ultra-redundant cloud computing and global fiber optic networks, we are expected to believe that the largest commodities exchange on the planet simply overheated and shut down. But let us look at what was happening behind the scenes during those 10 hours of darkness. On that very same night, 13,400,000 ounces of silver were moved from registered status to eligible status within the JP Morgan vaults. To understand the significance of this, you must understand the rules of the exchange. Registered silver is metal that is available for immediate delivery to satisfy a futures contract. Eligible silver is metal held in the vault that does not meet the requirements for delivery. By moving 13 million ounces out of the registered category, someone effectively removed a massive chunk of the available supply right as the price was screaming toward $80. This was not a technical glitch. This was an emergency measure to buy time. When the price of silver gaps up $10 in a single session, the short sellers on the COMEX face margin calls that run into the billions of dollars. If they cannot produce the cash or the metal, the exchange itself faces a systemic collapse. By halting the trade, they stopped the bleeding, but they could not fix the underlying wound. The reality is that the COMEX has become a market of paper promises. For every 1 ounce of physical silver sitting in their vaults, there are hundreds of ounces of paper silver traded in the form of futures and options. This system works perfectly as long as nobody asks for their metal. But the moment the industrial users and the sovereign funds start demanding physical delivery, the house of cards falls. We are seeing the birth of a two-tier market. On one side, you have the paper price, the digital number on your screen that can be manipulated by high-frequency trading algorithms and exchange halts. On the other side, you have the physical price, the actual cost to secure a 1,000-ounce bar. The gap between these two prices is the measure of the system's failure. As we head into the new year, the COMEX is increasingly becoming irrelevant. The power has shifted from the bankers in New York who push buttons to the refiners and vault keepers who actually hold the bars. The glitch was a warning shot. The system is no longer functioning, and the next time it breaks, a 10-hour halt will not be enough to save it. As we look toward the year 2026, we are not just guessing at the price of silver. We are mapping out a psychological and mathematical explosion that has already begun. Based on the current structural deficit and the total lockdown of Chinese exports, the road ahead will likely unfold in three distinct, high-intensity stages. The first stage is the gamma squeeze, taking us from $80 to $100. This is happening as we speak. In the options market, there are millions of call options sitting at strike prices of $85, $90, and $95. The market makers who sold these options never expected silver to reach these levels. Now, as the price rockets upward, they are forced to hedge their positions by buying silver futures. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. The higher the price goes, the more they must buy, which pushes the price even higher. I expect we will see silver touch the triple-digit milestone of $100 within the first few weeks of the new year. The second stage is the media mania, pushing the price from $100 to $125. At $100, silver stops being a niche topic for financial analysts and becomes a lead story on the nightly news. You will see headlines about silver hitting record highs in every major newspaper. This will bring in the public herd. People who have never bought a precious metal in their lives will start raiding pawn shops, buying every silver coin they can find, and piling into exchange-traded funds. This wave of retail capital is emotional and momentum-driven. It is not based on logic, but on the fear of being left behind. This influx of dumb money will drive a vertical price spike that defies all traditional valuation models. The third and most violent stage is industrial capitulation, taking us from $125 to $150 and beyond. At this level, the industrial users finally realize that the price is not coming back down. The temporary surcharges they added to their products become permanent. They stop fighting the market and start panic ordering. We will see tech giants like Samsung or Apple issuing corporate bonds for the sole purpose of securing silver inventories. They will liquidate other assets just to ensure their production lines do not go dark. This institutional buying power is massive. It does not look at charts or moving averages. It only looks at the empty warehouse floor. When the giants start bidding against each other for the last remaining bars, the gold-to-silver ratio will collapse to levels not seen in centuries. We are moving toward a world where the ratio could drop below 30-1. Silver is no longer a side bet. It is becoming a premier asset class. While there will be sharp corrections along the way, the destination is locked in by the deficit. The era of cheap available silver is dead, and the era of the silver explosion has arrived. Do not for 1 second believe that the Federal Reserve, the CFTC, or the massive banking institutions will sit idly by while silver reaches $150. They have lost the war of physical supply, so they will now pivot to a regulatory war. Their goal is not to fix the silver market, but to suppress the price by any means necessary to protect the perceived stability of the paper dollar. You must recognize their playbook before they execute it. The first weapon they will deploy is the margin nuke. We have seen this before. In late December of 2025, the CME Group already began increasing silver margin requirements. For a single futures contract, the initial deposit has been pushed toward $25,000. This is a deliberate move to force the small speculators out of the game. They want to make it so expensive to hold a position that you are forced to sell, creating a wave of liquidations that briefly crashes the price. This is exactly how they broke the Hunt brothers in 1980 and how they ended the rally in 2011. The second tactic is the imposition of emergency position limits. The CFTC has the authority to declare a market emergency if they believe speculation is distorting the price. They can cap the number of contracts any individual or entity can hold, effectively cutting off the oxygen to the rally. But here is the corruption you must watch for. They often grant waivers to the commercial hedgers, the big banks like JP Morgan, while keeping the restrictions on everyone else. It is a rigged game designed to keep the power in the hands of the incumbents. The third and perhaps most insidious weapon is the manipulation of the exchange-traded funds, specifically SLV. In December of 2025, the iShares Silver Trust hit a high of over $61. Watch for sudden changes in their prospectus. They may announce a suspension of new share creations or move toward cash settlement instead of physical delivery. This disconnects the ETF from the real silver price. You could see the physical price at $100 while the ETF trades at $70 because it is no longer backed by the metal in the vault. Finally, expect the political hammer. As the price of silver rises, Politicians will go on television to blame hoarders for holding the green energy revolution hostage. They will propose windfall profit taxes on precious metals sales or even suggest a nationalization of silver for strategic defense. When these headlines hit, the price may experience violent dips of 20% in a single day. The mainstream media will scream that the silver bubble has burst. Do not fall for the trap. Regulations cannot create a single ounce of silver. Margin hikes cannot mine the earth. Taxes cannot refine ore. All these measures do is kill the paper demand. They do absolutely nothing to solve the 5,000-ton physical deficit. In fact, they make it worse by driving the trade into the shadows and into the hands of those who refuse to sell. When you see the empire striking back with these regulations, view it as a sign of their terminal desperation. It is not a sign of strength, but an admission that they have lost control over the physical reality of silver. As we approach the climax of this global silver squeeze, the most important question you must answer is not how high the price will go, but what you will do when it gets there. Most people have been conditioned to think of wealth in terms of paper currency. They wait for silver to hit $100 or $150 just so they can sell it and see a larger number in their bank account. This is a fundamental mistake. If silver is trading at $150, it means the purchasing power of the dollar has collapsed. Selling the scarcest asset on earth for a currency that is being printed into oblivion is like trading a life raft for a handful of dry sand. You must think in terms of asset swaps, not sales. Your silver is not just an investment. It is a bridge to the next financial system. Strategy number 1 is the gold swap. Historically, the gold to silver ratio has averaged around 60-1. During extreme speculative peaks, like in 1980, it dropped to 17-1. In early 2025, we saw the ratio hover around 80. As the silver squeeze intensifies and silver outperforms gold, this ratio will collapse. When the ratio drops below 40-1, you should consider swapping a portion of your silver for stable gold. This allows you to lock in your massive silver gains into a more stable, less volatile form of wealth without ever returning to the fiat system. Strategy number 2 is the asset swap for productive wealth. This is where true generational wealth is created. You should measure the value of your silver in terms of tangible property. In 1980, at the height of the last great silver bull market, it took roughly 2,000 ounces of silver to buy the average American home. In the years following, that number ballooned to over 10,000 ounces. We are heading back to those 1980 levels. Imagine a scenario where the silver price hits $200 and the real estate bubble finally pops due to high interest rates and economic contraction. At that moment, you might be able to trade 1 or 2 monster boxes of silver for a high-quality rental property or a significant piece of land. That is the ultimate exit. You move from a defensive, non-yielding metal into a productive asset that generates monthly cash flow and provides a roof over your head. We are living through history. Saturday, December 28th, 2025, 2 days before China locks the door, 2 days before the global deficit comes due. For those of you who prepared, who listened when the mainstream media was laughing at silver at $30, you are now your own central bank. You have secured your seat on the life raft. For those still on the sidelines, the window is not just closing, it is being welded shut. Do not let the volatility shake you. Do not let the regulatory headlines scare you. Hold the line, protect your stack, and remember that we are witnessing the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. The era of paper is ending, and the era of physical reality has begun.